Good morning.
Happy days, good morning.
How are you, George?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well.
Nice of you to come and take this interview.
No worries, pleasure.
George, I just want to do a quick video to talk about yourself and how you got to where you are today, and what inspired you to become a pilot, and hopefully the viewers can get some inspiration from your story.
Sure, yeah, no trouble.
So let's start about asking, like, how'd you get into this crazy world?
So I think for me it started, so when I was a toddler, both my parents worked at Heathrow Airport. Mum was in security, Dad was a firefighter.
I've got to have my Red Bull, George.
And yeah, Nan and Granddad were my childcare. So they used to take me on Mum and Dad's lunch break to go to the airport to go and see them. And of course, back in those days, in the 90s, you could literally walk right through the terminal and go to the viewing areas and stuff like that. So my granddad had an interest in aviation. He worked in and around the airport for his working life, so he always had a keen interest in aviation as well. And I think since such a young age, you know, I've been surrounded by aircraft and aviation, and yeah, since then it was like, these are really cool. And yeah, I caught the aviation bug, as they say.
At a very early age, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, that's definitely, you know, ever since then, even as a young boy then, used to go up, see Nan and Grandad, and, you know, me and Grandad used to go to loads of little airfields or big airports and, you know, do a bit of plane spotting and just troll the airfield cafes. So it's quite funny now, actually, going back to airfields that I remember going to, you know, when I was a toddler with Grandad, and seeing how they've changed or not changed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good. So yeah, lots of good memories.
So what about your first ever flight in an aircraft? What did that do to you?
So my first ever flight was with cadets. So I joined cadets when I was 13.
So you've never been in a small aircraft before you joined the cadets?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, never been in a small aircraft. We'd been away on a holiday in some commercial aircraft. Sure. But I don't really remember it much. I was only little, and you know, it was exciting looking out the window. But yeah, so I joined cadets, and then
at what age, sorry, was that?
13. So I joined cadets. Okay. And then yeah, alongside school, I used to go 2 parade nights each week, and you know, it was like, oh my god, this could be my break into getting into flying. Potentially through the Air Force initially was one of my thoughts. So yeah, I was keen as you like, and did all my uniform, polished my boots, you know, practice my drill, get everything sorted, which taught me loads of other life skills, which was really good. But yeah, it was at a Boscombe Down, and there's a lady called Nikki, who's now an air ambulance pilot, actually. And yeah, first
hello, Nikki.
First yeah, if she's watching. It was yeah, in a grub tutor, which were the RAF trainers at the time, out of Boscombe Down. And yeah, I remember you get a briefing beforehand, you've got to put a parachute on, and they give you the standard issue RAF sunglasses.
So did you start your PPL training at the cadets?
No, so the cadets offer a bit like the initial training, I guess, so scholarships to cadets, so there's gliding and flying. So once I did my air experience flight, as it was called, which I guess is equivalent to like a trial lesson, I then applied when I was 16 for a gliding scholarship, which you could only apply for once you were 16. So I did that, and I went to Odium, where they flew motor gliders, vigilant motor gliders, and you get, well, off the top of my head, I think it was 10 hours.
So does that give you some sort of license at the end of those glider plus the
yeah, so
micro-lights?
It does, but in the military world, so it's under MAA rules as opposed to CAA rules. Okay. So so effectively the 10 hours initially that I got was towards going to do my first solo, and I think after about 7 or 8 hours, it's in my old cadet logbook, I went solo in the Vigilant when I was 16, and it was like awesome, absolutely awesome. I mean, at the time, once you take off, it's quite funny because you know, you do everything fine, and then you don't really know it's coming, and your instructor just goes, right, George, you're going to do this on your own now. And you think, oh god, you know, I can't mess this one up. Then they get out, and then you focus, and you're concentrated, and you do your checks, and then you line up, and you take off. And then you get downwind, and you do your downwind checks. And then you think, oh, I've got like 3 or 4 minutes of the downwind leg now. And then you think, I'm on my own. Oh my goodness. So yeah, everyone sings a song. So I think I was humming Stand By Me by Benny King, or a tune on the downwind, just to keep myself you know, occupied and not to think too much about it.
Well, there was definitely no one sitting by you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very true. But yeah, so I remember that everyone's got a first solo song, as I'm sure you did when you did your first solo.
Mine was just fear.
Yeah. And then yeah, come back in, landed, and then it sort of hits you and you're like, oh my god, that was amazing.
Yeah.
So and literally ever since that moment, well, since the first flight really, it was like, yeah, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do.
All right. So what age were you when you completed your PPI and got that very important certificate?
Yes. So after my gliding scholarship, Odium allowed me to stay on as a flight staff cadet, so helping out, and they put you through effectively the MAA training program towards becoming like a gliding instructor to teach cadets. So I did that. I did my advanced gliding course, which is a few more solos. It's very similar to the PPL type syllabus on paper. So yeah, did a few more solos, and then I applied for a flying scholarship through cadets. And all the scholarships at the time were done at Tayside in Dundee, who are no longer around, which is crazy. So yeah, did my application, heard back, and they were like, congratulations, you've got a cadet scholarship. Which again, this time, similar, I think it's 12 hours this one, and it took you from, again, in theory, no flying experience. Obviously I had the gliding, and the bonus was, because it's a motor glider, it's very similar to powered flying, whereas some cadets would have done conventional gliding with a winch launch. So this would be the first bit of training in sort of powered aircraft, really. Thankfully for me, I had my vigilant hours, so a bit of knowledge behind it, and it was in a Grub 115D, a Heron, which are the old Navy trainers that Tayside had bought. Very similar to the Tutor, and yeah, did my few hours up there, and that got me to first solo. And then I applied for a few more scholarships and bursaries, and Bristow Helicopters were actually sponsoring people, put them through their NPPL, as it was at the time, to then go on and potentially fly for them in sort of the search and rescue or oil rig world. So I applied for that. I had an application in for NATS as an ATCO as well, and I had an application in for the Air Force, because I thought, however I get to it, I want to get into aviation, even if it means I have to fund it myself.
So in any field of aviation, you were determined to get into.
Absolutely. So I had them all sort of on the go, and I heard back from the Bristow one, and they said, congratulations, I was one of 4 that year, I think.
Wow.
To be awarded it, and because I already had hours up at Tayside, effectively I was able to bump what would have been an NPPL up to a full PPL. So yeah, went back up to Tayside because I knew the instructors there and I knew the school, and yeah, I did it in, I think it was 2 stints, like a month at a time. Worked were really good, and I say I was at Goodwood at the time, working at the airfield, so literally my entire life is around aviation in some way, shape or form. And yeah, went and did my PPL.
So what age were you when you actually got your PPL?
So I was 17.
Wow.
So yeah, literally the minimum.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know people ask this question all the time, and I don't think it's very important, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How many hours did you do before you achieved your PPL? So
I did mine in the minimum, 45. Wow. So yeah, I think it was a push, but I was, because I had sort of the scholarship to use, I was determined to, you know, make good use of it. So any time that I wasn't physically flying, it'd be right, cool, into the book, study, you know, practice. I had a simulator at home, practice your checks, practice your flying, practice your RT. YouTube is a great source for that, you know, watching videos, 100%. Getting your RT and things.
I watch you all the time.
And which is one of the reasons why I now do YouTube, you know, hopefully sort of, yeah, inspire and help people, because it helped me at the time. And yeah, so I did it in literally the minimum 45, to the point where actually when we were putting the application together, I'm pretty sure I had to go back up and do 20 minutes solo in the circuit because I was missing 20 minutes solo time. Right. So yeah, so that was really cool. And yeah, the guys and girls up at Tayside were really helpful, and used to people coming through on sort of scholarships, so it was quite well structured to get you through sort of in the minimum. Yeah, so up to today, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're a commercial pilot, license holder. Yes. You're a full IR instrument holder. Yes. And you're a CFI, an instructor? Yes, yeah, I can just call it FI over here, but yeah. Yeah, for our American cousins, which I'm used to, it's CFI, with your night rating and all the bells and whistles to go with that. But I've flown with you for quite a while now, and in my journey to get my PPL,
I think one of the biggest hurdles was sticking to it.
Yeah.
And I found that it's not as much as the school, it's the instructor.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you're with.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to have, I didn't know you at the time, but I was very lucky to have an instructor, Harry, who made it fun.
Yeah.
And made me stick to it. And that's exactly how we fly, you know, as you're my partner in flying, as we call it. We have a lot of fun when we fly together. We fly together quite a lot now. But what I get from watching your channels, and I watched your channels before I knew you, as a new pilot, you know, you go all through YouTube, and I don't think there's a video I haven't watched. But what you come out as very passionate at what you do. And one of the interesting things about you, George, is that you have no sort of inspiration to be a commercial pilot, as in an airline pilot, which is very rare. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was younger, it was definitely, you know, in the forefront of my mind, you know, to go be a commercial pilot. And I say weirdly, I've been forced down this path in a bit of a way. I did get offered a job with West Atlantic to go and fly ATPs, and it didn't work out. I had a business change for whatever reason, let me know and said, sorry, we don't need pilots. So I got a job at Gatwick at the time, then working in airfield ops. And after that happened, it sort of made me realise, do you know what, actually general aviation is so much more fun.
Absolutely.
And you can do so much more with it. And for me, it was about sort of quality of life. Now, not to say that being an airline pilot gives you a bad quality of life at all, but yeah, for me, having a ground-based job in aviation, which is really interesting, you know, keeps me focused, each day's different, and that pays the bills ultimately. And then it gives me time to, you know, now instruct. And, you know, when I discovered about instructing and helping people get into aviation, I was like, you know what, that's more me, I think.
I think that's the difference, George, is that a lot of instructors go into being an instructor to build up their hours to that point of being an airline pilot.
Yeah.
But you actually love what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and and everyone that knows you knows that. So I mean, I think that's very unique for an instructor.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is part of it as well. Is you know, being an instructor is conveying all the, like you say, the fun and the interesting side of things, from, you know, getting interest in it. Part of, or I feel like part of my duty as a flying instructor is not just to teach someone to fly, but then also show them what doors it opens, you know, and that you can go to France and go for lunch, or you can take your family on a day trip somewhere, or you know, if you wanted to, you can overfly a big airport on the way to somewhere, and, you know, experience all these things, which actually
everything that we've done.
Absolutely. yeah, which just adds the fun to it. You know, it's once you get your license, that's it. You know, it's a very cliche saying, but the world's your oyster as such. So yeah, and that's what I hope people make of it. And it's the same, you know, if you go rent overseas on holiday, there's a local airfield, go rent a plane. You know, you might need to do an hour with an instructor or have an instructor sat with you, but take your family, take your friends, and go and see the world from, you know, a different perspective. It's that's what I love about it. You know, like I hope down the line one day, and I'm sure we've got many more trips hopefully to come up, but yeah, explore the world from a different perspective and experience the different cultures, the countries, and show people that actually, you know, having your PPL actually changes your life almost. You know, you can do so much, not just for you, but again, you know, family and friends. So yeah, well,
that's another thing that you're very lucky with. I mean, you've got a beautiful wife, Jane, and 2 beautiful kids, and they support you in what you do, and they love to fly with you as well, which is you know, the whole thing really in one box, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What advice could you give, like, young people or older people who want to do their PPL and to become a pilot? So in today's world, I mean, you were very lucky that you managed to do it with the sponsorships and everything else.
Yes.
I mean, are there sponsorships still available?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's still loads of sponsorships. I say there's, and again, sponsorships and bursaries, or scholarships and bursaries, are available for people that just want to do it for fun, get into their PPL or add a rating on. And at the same time, there's a lot of cadetships now coming out because the world's desperate for airline pilots, to go and join the airline. So definitely do your research. It's probably one tip. There's lots of info on my website. I've got a future Coepilot hub.
And your website is?
Coepilot with an E, C-O-E pilot, all one word, .uk.
Excellent.
And yeah, you'll see on the future Coepilot bit, there's information about starting out and scholarships and bursaries.
Well, hopefully they'll be up here or here. I always wanted to do this, up over here somewhere.
There'll be a link somewhere. But top tips, go and try it. You know, first of all, go down to your local airfield and yeah, go for a trial lesson or gliding club. If there's a gliding club, go and try it out. You read all this stuff online and you watch videos, but nothing is the same as going and trying it for the first time. And you know, and this is another thing I've learnt during instructing. I've taken people up that have a fear of flying, who have, you know, gone up with their friend that's got a trial flight, and we've landed and they've said, I loved it, I want to go again. You know, just being able to do that is awesome. So yeah, definitely go and try it. Don't give up. You know, it seems like sometimes you're like, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of commitment, but you can do it in your own time, at your own pace, around your own budget. You know, there's no rush to get it done. A lot of people think, oh, well, I need to get it done in this time frame. Well, don't, enjoy it. You know, live life around it.
Well, you did yours in 45 hours, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so definitely don't give up. There will be times where you think maybe it's the ground exams, it's different for everyone. Maybe it's part of the physical flying syllabus where you think, oh, this is a nightmare. Why am I doing this? Because it's, you know, it can be stressful at times. But like I say, a good flying instructor will make it fun and enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, make the most of it, really. Get as much of it out of it as you can. And I'm sure before long, even with just those two things, there'll probably be lots more people watching this video that have a lot more aviation things in their lives, whether it be indoors or on their YouTube channel, or that's it. Once you get into it, that's it. You live and breathe it, and you can't change it.
With the schools, I mean, general aviation has changed so much, especially here in the UK. There's been a lot of schools that have gone under,
yes,
as we know. What advice could you give to new students about ways of payment to these schools? Because a lot of schools, I remember when I was going, you know, they were trying to force you or give you a better deal if you pay a lump sum.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely.
What advice would you give people in choosing the right school?
Yep.
And also, if they're not happy with the instructor they have, again, I've spoken to a lot of wannabe pilots who have come to me and said, you know, I don't like my instructor. You know, we just don't click.
Yeah.
And I think that's really key.
Yeah,
to your success of establishing your PPL. What advice could you give to people?
So I think I say choosing a school, and usually you get sort of allocated an instructor, but yeah, do your research again. So see what options are available. Granted, for some people they're going to be less than others, but head down to the local schools and go and have a chat initially. Don't never forget that effectively you are the customer, so you know, it's got to be right for you. Don't be forced into anything. Definitely don't pay up front, would be my advice. Allow the school to invoice you for what you've done, and then pay them on receipt of the invoice. Obviously have the funds ready to go, so you can keep it fairly consistent. But yeah, don't pay up front if you can help it.
But some schools give you an incentive, don't they?
Yeah, so I think they do, but again, it's a hard one to weigh up. It's you know, with the way of the world, it's the financial risk, I guess. I'm not a financial advisor, but you know, it'd be much better to spend a little bit more on it, knowing that there's no financial risk, in my opinion, and enjoy it. And if it means it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer. It's still hours in your logbook. You know, it's useful stuff. It's not, like I say, there's not a rush to get through it. Some people pick it up quicker than others. Everyone's different because we're all different humans. So yeah, definitely, if you can avoid it, don't pay up front would be my advice. And you know, be honest with your instructor. It's a big thing, you know, like you say, learning to fly, and you want to make sure you're safe and you enjoy it, are the two key things. And you know, again, as an instructor, a good instructor will understand and take on feedback as much as the instructor will give feedback to the student. So the school and the chief flying instructor or the head of training have got sort of a duty to make sure that you're getting on with your course well and you're getting on with your instructor well. So if you find you're not clicking with something, and it might just be one particular part, in which case it might be worth trying that with a different instructor. It might be actually, yeah, we're not gelling because we're just two different type of people. Have that chat with the school and the instructor, you know, and as long as you do it in a diplomatic way, and give the honest feedback, you know, they
well, like you said,
they can't take offence to that.
You're the customer.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I mean, you're paying for a service, then you know you have a choice of if you're unhappy, then speak out.
Absolutely.
And get it done. I think when I did my PPL, I didn't pay a lump sum. What I did do, and I think it's probably quite safe the way I did it, is that I topped up my account as I went along, and was still able to benefit from the incentives of that. Great advice, George. Thank you very much. Let's talk about before you actually start your investment into your PPL.
Yeah.
There's a medical.
Yes.
That needs to be.
So there's different medicals depending on which license you want to go for. So there's a few different licenses. There's the National Private Pilot's License, which is for light aircraft. You can do microlights, you could do motor gliders. That's for generally flying in the UK, nice weather days, for fun. That's your NPPL. It's a little bit restricted because you can't add on the ratings and additional parts that you could to a PPL license, a private pilot's license. But if you're getting into it for a bit of fun, that's a good way to start.
And that is
that's the National Private Pilot's License.
Right. And is there a weight restriction on the plane that you can fly with that, or I mean, you can't get down and jump into a PA-28 or?
Yes, no, yeah. So there are limitations again, depending on whether you're flying a microlight or a single or simple single engine aircraft, or single engine piston aircraft in the other licenses, or a motor glider. There's different restrictions on what you can, but effectively you're limited to the amount of people you can take flying, weight of the aircraft, the complexity of the aircraft. So it's simple, small aircraft. You and potentially up to 3 passengers can fly on that license in the day, on a nice weather day. So that's the very basic one that you start with. Just above that is a light aircraft pilot's license, which is, again, it's the first step on the ladder of the multiple licenses you can go and do. It's very similar to the National Private Pilot's License, and they're actually looking at changing them at the minute and simplifying it, because there's lots of different options for what should be one sort of license or area. So since Brexit and we left the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, and the UK Civil Aviation Authority are now on their own, we've had to merge the EASA rules in to our law to start with, and but we're trying to make it more simple and sort of get the one license. So the light aircraft pilot's license, again, limits you on who you can fly with and sort of the weather and things you can fly, and the size of aircraft, but similar to the NPPL. So for those two, effectively you can fly on similar to a professional driver, effectively, but a declaration which just says, yeah, I'm fit to fly, you've got no major issues. Some may require a doctor to sign it off, but it's pretty simple.
With those two,
yes,
just to interrupt you quickly, is there any theory?
Yes, so there's still the theory, like you would as a PPL, effectively.
It's the same theory, is it?
Yeah, very similar.
Okay.
There's a few bits, obviously, that are slightly different on the course, and again, depending on the aircraft that you're going to fly, it's slightly different. So if you're flying microlights, it'll be slightly different from what you do theory-wise for the aircraft portion of it and the aircraft knowledge, a few localised rules.
So just for people that are watching this, you don't have to do those two if you want to go straight to a PPL.
Yes,
probably the next one you're going to mention.
Yes, exactly that. So those are options there if you're looking to do it for fun, and you know that's it. I'm only going to do it for fun. They're good options to look at. And again, the hour requirement's slightly less, so actually it's probably a bit cheaper than doing a full PPL. Full PPL then, private pilot's license, is allowing you to fly. It's almost like getting a blank driving license, and depending on the aircraft category you want to fly, you can get ratings for different aircraft. So in theory, there's nothing stopping you flying a 747 on a PPL. The only law is that you can't get paid for it, effectively. If you had a rating for a 747, obviously it doesn't quite work like that, but you start off in a single engine piston aircraft, like Cessna 172s or your PA-28. If you don't know what they are, have a quick Google. They're like the Ford Focus of the skies. And yeah, so you can fly them. You fly in day only initially, but then you can add on additional ratings. So you can fly multi-engine aircraft if you want to. You can fly in bad weather by getting an instrument rating. You can do a night rating. I don't know if I already just said that. Aerobatics, there's a course for that as well, which you can do. That's not actually a rating, but you can do that as well. So it opens lots of doors, and if you did want to then go commercial, you can. Effectively, it's like the next step along the ladder to go on and become commercial.
So commercial pilot is basically, it allows you to charge.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So commercial pilot.
It doesn't allow you to be an airline pilot.
No. Again, so yeah, so that's a different part. So just quickly on the medicals before we talk through commercial stuff. So for a PPL, you need a Class 2, a CAA Class 2 license, which effectively is going to a aeromedical examiner, just a doctor, and they check your heart, they check your blood pressure, your height, your weight, your eyesight, your hearing. Nothing majorly complex. It's like a bit of an MOT really, and that lasts 5 years.
After a certain age, it's yearly.
Yes, it is. So I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what age that is, but the details are on the CAA website. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking that out. But yeah, that's a good shout. If you want to go commercial, my recommendation would be to get a class, well, you need a class 1, but obviously you're going to start with your private pilot's license first. My recommendation would be to get a class 1 medical, which is the strictest at the beginning. It's quite expensive. I think it's about £600 these days for an initial one. But that will also give you, because it overrides a class 2, it will give you a class 2 as part of it.
Right.
And if you're only going to do your PPL flying initially, once you've done your first one, your class 1 can lapse and you can fly on your class 2 medical, depending on how old you are, for X amount of time. And then when you're ready to go commercial, you can then get your class 1 back, knowing actually I've got no underlying issues to be worried about.
Excellent.
So yeah, back to the commercial point then. So commercial pilot's license allows you to fly for remuneration, effectively, so fly for money. It doesn't have to be, or it doesn't qualify you to fly for the airline straight away. There are other ratings you do for that. There is what they call an ATPL, or a frozen ATPL. So a frozen ATPL is made up of smaller licenses and ratings, effectively. So it's your commercial pilot's license, your instrument rating, which allows you to fly in bad weather on a multi-engine aircraft as well, so multi-engine instrument rating. You have to do an upset prevention recovery training course, which is a few hours in an aerobatic aircraft, learning how to recover the aircraft from unusual attitudes, as it says on the tin. And you then need to do a multi-crew course, an MCC. Some call it an APS now, airline preparation scheme, which are tailored towards a specific airline. And there's also then a bolt-on called a JOC, a jet orientation course. So a frozen ATPL is made up of all of those parts. You then, and there's the ground school you need for that as well. There's a lot more in-depth ground school that you need to do to get to that point. At that point then you can apply for airline roles, and you then do a type rating in a certain aircraft, and then once you've flown 1,500 hours in an airline transport environment, you then get an unfrozen ATPL, or just an ATPL as it's called, which then allows you to become a captain.
I was reading a few articles lately because of the shortage of pilots. It's a great time to be a pilot right now. Yeah,
absolutely.
That there's a 1,500 hour restriction on before you can join the airlines, but that's not necessarily true, is it?
No.
One of our friends,
yes,
you know, who's recently joined an airline, he's a lot lower hours than that.
Yes.
Explain that. I mean, what is the requirements?
So it depends on the airline. So when the airline gets certified to operate as an airline, they'll go to the relevant aviation authority, the CAA in the UK here for us, and they'll say, this is the aircraft we're looking at flying, this is the training course for the pilots and cabin crew and engineers that we're using, this is how we plan to operate, this is the routes, etc, etc. So there's a multitude of factors, the complexity of aircraft, what type of weather they're going to be flying in. If they're going to be authorised to fly in really thick fog, they need to have specialist training and risk assessments, and the aircraft need to be up for it. But again, because of that, then the pilots, they'll want to be sort of more suitably qualified than brand new, fresh out of training newbie pilots. I think the world more recently has turned in the favour of low hour and freshly qualified pilots, which is good, I think, to get the experience in. And they're sort of tailoring now sort of the operation around the staff that they have, as opposed to saying, no, we're only going to take pilots that have got 500 hours because that's what our insurance says and that's sort of how we operate. Whereas now they're saying, actually, we need pilots to come in. So we'll say the more complex airports that we have, if they fly into somewhere, so London City, for example, is a complex airport that needs additional training. Then they'll put maybe the crews that are qualified on that. Lots of different factors. You know, if you're flying in somewhere that's constantly really bad fog and they have to use the auto land and need qualifications for that, then they might put the experienced pilots on that. So there's a multitude of factors built into it. And I say probably just insurance. I'm not exactly sure how aircraft insurance works on the commercial side, but the same as driving a car, I guess, it becomes a bit cheaper if you've got a lot more experienced people flying it. So, but yeah, it varies for the airlines, but a lot of the airlines now are taking people with a frozen ATPL and not necessarily any experience. I think generally the bigger the aircraft, the more experience they want you to have, but that's not a rock solid rule. So if you're looking at something long haul, that's usually where they take pilots that have gained a bit of experience on the lighter aircraft and then move on through with sort of a set amount of minimum hours.
Excellent. So hopefully, you know, we've covered the road from zero to hero. Well, let me go back a little bit, because something that, you know, I witnessed with people that were training at the same time as me. You know, we're all excited to get that certificate, PPL. But a few people that I know have got their PPL and stopped flying.
Right.
You know, and that seems to be a trend to that. I mean, I can understand it could be financial or whatever. But you've got your PPL, and as you said earlier, that opens the doors or the skies.
Yes, yeah.
You know, for you to fly wherever you want. So if I got my PPL, can I fly to France?
Yeah, so yeah, if you've got your PPL, absolutely, you can fly to France. Again, depending on where you're renting the aircraft from, some people might do a check-out with an instructor, but yeah, there's nothing stopping you flying around the world, effectively, in a small aircraft. You can go wherever you want, however big your budget is, I guess. So yeah, once you've got your PPL, you can go where you want. Depending on where you got your license, so for us in the UK, it's limited to British registered aircraft, effectively. So if we want to fly a British registered aircraft, we're fine to do so, and we can fly that anywhere in the world. Depending on a country's aviation authority, they may change the rules slightly. So for example, since we left the EASA, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Cut that bit out. So depending on the country you're flying in, depends on their rules as to whether you can fly the aircraft or not. So in America, for example, they acknowledge the UK license. There's a bit of paperwork that you go through, and I think probably a local checkout with an instructor, but you could then go and rent an aircraft in America with what they call a piggyback license. I think it's similar down in sort of Australia and New Zealand. A bit more difficult for Europe since Brexit. There's a bit of red tape, but hopefully that will be resolved soon. But if you've got a British registered aircraft and you've got a British license, then you can fly that wherever you want in the world.
Excellent. And obviously, you know, it's a PPL, as I've learnt, it's just a starting block.
Absolutely.
Because if we were to fly in, I mean, you can't see outside, viewers, but you know, the clouds are low and it's quite windy out there. And if we wanted to fly in this weather, then you would need some sort of instrument rating. And with the instrument rating, as I've gone through it myself, you know, here in the UK we have an IRR.
Yes.
And I'll ask you to explain that in a bit. And we have the full IR, which I'm 50% going through, actually probably 10% going through. Explain the difference between the restricted IR and the full IR. Well, there's actually quite a few. There's a restricted IR, there's a CBIR, there's a BIR, and there's an IR.
Yes.
And I found that confusing when I was looking. So, you know, explain about the instrument ratings and what privileges do you get with those?
So there's different ratings. Like you say, it's very complicated. So we'll start with the IRR, also known as the IMC rating, which is a UK rating, and it's basically the first step on the instrument rating ladder. So it's for someone that's got their PPL, for example. You can have it on a commercial license, but it was sort of designed around someone having a PPL, and they've got a bit of experience, and they want to then potentially be able to fly when the weather's not so nice. And it was almost a get out of the muck free card, really, is what it was designed for, is my understanding. So it allows you to fly instrument approaches, and it allows you to fly on instruments in the UK in bad weather. And again, everyone has different personal limits. Once you start flying instrument approaches, the airports and the instruments have different minima that you can fly down to, but it's the first step in that, basically. It doesn't allow you to fly in the airways. That needs a full instrument rating, which is the IR. And CBIR and IR.
Just before you got to CBIR,
yes.
With the IMC IIR rating,
yes,
does that allow you to fly in the clouds?
Yes. So legally, yes, you can fly in the clouds. You can fly in instruments. Again, because of where you're allowed to fly, you can't fly in the airway system.
Sure.
You might be outside of controlled airspace, which means then that air traffic control can't necessarily guarantee you deconfliction against another aircraft. So there's lots of complexities without going into the complexities too much. But yes, legally you can. It's down to, you as a qualified pilot, once you get that license, to make a judgment on, is this safe to do? Is this going to be a sensible thing to do? I wouldn't recommend someone that's just got an IRR to go up when you've got a 400-foot cloud base, flying cloud an entire way to somewhere, and then fly an instrument approach. Could you do it legally? Well, providing it's within the restrictions of your license, yes, you could. Is that the most sensible thing to do? Probably not. So again, it's judging it, really. But if we were going somewhere for a day out and we can see that the weather's coming in a little bit somewhere, do you know what? Actually, we fly like we usually do most of the way, and then it doesn't matter if the weather's a bit bad when we get there, because we can fly an instrument approach and land. So
I think that's where you get the when you do your theory, you get that knowledge for making that call.
Yes.
But the other big restriction about the instrument or the IRR rating is that it's only valid within the UK.
Yes, yeah.
Right, let's talk about the next ones then.
Yes, so there's a couple of intermediary ones. So the BIR, the EIR, en route IR, as such. So they were from, my understanding, EASA and sort of a wider licensing group that allow you to fly in the airways, but not necessarily approaches. So they allow you to fly on instruments in bad weather. If you're going from and to somewhere that's got nice weather, you can pop up in the airways with all the commercial traffic, and pop back out and then land visually like you usually do. I'm not a massive expert on those. I hold my hands up, so your best bet is to look online for those. I don't know if you can get them on a UK license. I think they're on a European license. You might be able to, but they're sort of, again, specific for a particular scenario, so they're still a bit restrictive. And then at the top of the tree, you've got the full IR, which means exactly the same as a CBIR. The CB part, the competency based, just depends on how you complete the course.
But isn't that also based that you already have an IRR?
Yes, so yeah, it's
so it's an upgrade from your IIR up to a full IR.
That's the most common way of doing it. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, it does make it cheaper, and it reduces the minimum hours that you need to do for the course effectively, which is a good way to do it. So if you are looking at going commercial or getting an instrument rating eventually, even if you're doing that on a private license, I definitely recommend doing your IRR first. Then you can do some IFR hour building as part of your flying, and then you can use those hours towards the competency-based CBIR, which is a full IR. So if someone's got no instrument experience and they do a full instrument rating, and someone's done a competency-based instrument rating, they're both equal. You've both got a full instrument rating. Sure. There's a lot of wrong or incorrect facts online, I think, about what they are and if they're different things or not. They're not. They're exactly the same thing. It's just how you complete the course effectively that you do it.
Excellent. Well, I mean, like I said before, we fly a lot together, and I actually prefer flying in, IFR. It's so much safer and easier. Excellent. I mean, the other thing that is the responsibility of being a PIC, especially if you're carrying passengers, and it's something that we went through the other day actually with myself. I enjoy flying, and when we fly together, we normally share the flights. On this particular flight, I sat down. I said to George, I think I'm getting a cold. I don't feel safe enough to fly. And I think, to the viewers that are watching this, even though, you're excited to log them hours, get more hours and whatnot, you've got to be safe to fly.
Yes.
And you've got to be a responsible PIC. I was quite proud of myself for saying it. And as you said at the time, good shout, you have control, and off we went. The responsibility of a PIC shouldn't be taken lightly, should it?
No, absolutely. So, like I say, it's these are dangerous machines if they're in the wrong hands or they're not handled correctly. So, I think that's the bit which will make the difference between a pilot and a good pilot, in my eyes, is the stuff around the physical flying. So, in the old days, airmanship, as you've probably heard it called, it's now sort of threat and error management, as it's referred to. Yep. But yeah, the decision making, the planning, the lookout when you're flying, thinking about other traffic, situational awareness, listening out on the radio. There's so many parts to it, and that's actually probably, as an instructor, the hardest part to teach, because the physical flying is not too bad. Follow me, I'll show you this, and you do this. It's all the planning and the decision making and things, which again, ultimately, once someone gets a license, is going to have to do for themselves. So you sort of give them the nuggets and the skills to be able to make them, or be able to make those decisions on their own. That's the key part. So yeah, once you get your license, and again, when you learn from experiences, really. So I'm sure we've all had experiences where you think, oh, I won't do that again, or I'll do that differently next time. In the same way, every now and then everyone has a bad landing. Yeah, it takes quite a lot of time to get used to good landings. New aircraft and things like that can stump you sometimes.
Yeah, every aircraft is different,
Absolutely.
and the characteristics of that aircraft is different. One thing that, just going back to doing your PPL, which I experienced myself, is that, yes, trust in what your instructor says. If he says to you, you're ready for a solo, then he has the experience to make that call. In my case, my instructor told me I was ready for solo for weeks before I did my solo, because a lot of flying boils down to confidence.
Yes.
I knew I could fly the aircraft. I knew I can get up and I knew I can get down. But I still had a lack of confidence. So I was not afraid to go back to my instructor and say, look, Harry, I don't feel confident enough at the moment.
Yep.
And the biggest take from that, if anyone's watching this, is don't rush your PPL. Everyone learns at a different pace.
Yeah.
You done yours in a minimum 45 hours. I did mine in, I think it was 70 hours, which apparently is the average.
Yep.
For that. But I did it at my pace. I wasn't forced or rushed into it. And again, that's a good sign of the relationship I had with my instructor. George, lovely speaking to you.
Alright.
Hopefully this would help any inspiring pilot who wants to do their PPL to jump in that plane and reach for the stars.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. And, pleasure flying with you. Thank you to anyone that is watching. Any questions for either of us, then please drop us a comment. Make sure you follow us on the social media. Val, you're on Instagram.
Am I?
You are.
Okay.
Flying Gangster.
Oh, yes.
So you can find Val there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube as well, Coepilot UK. But yeah, let us know what you think. If you've got any more questions, leave us a comment or drop us a message on one of the social media. And yeah, hopefully it's useful in some way. Hopefully it's inspired some people in some way, and hopefully you'll be back to watch us on some more fun flying adventures.
Absolutely. And like George said, he's ready to take any comments or questions. Leave it on his any of his social media and he'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.